Looks like I caused a bit of a stir when I made a video on this very box a couple of weeks ago. Well, it's time to find out whether I was right or not. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, that's right, a couple of weeks ago I made a video talking about this very box of German beers from Lidl. They're all kind of Oktoberfest themed beers for the most part. One of them is one of the actual kind of core 6 Oktoberfest beers, that of course being the Hofbrau, but the rest of them are from, in general, smaller German brewers. I think there is a couple of exceptions, but you know, for the most part, the majority of the beers largely unknown in the UK until this point. I made a video saying that, look, yes, it's cheap per bottle compared to what we're paying for, let's be honest, our own heavily hopped craft beer, but compared to what you can get some very, very good European beer for in this country right now through mail order, £2.50 a bottle is really only any good if the beer is any good. It's still not expensive by any means. If you pay £2.50 for a beer these days and it turns out not to be very good, it doesn't feel like the end of the world. But ultimately, if only a couple of these are any good, 25 quid for the case, it's not a bargain. Anyway, that's all I said. I'm not going to say it again. There was a mixed bag of views in the comments of that video, and a lot of people subscribed as a result of that video, so thank you very much for you people for that, and welcome aboard. And hopefully this video now is going to answer some of the questions that all got into. Mainly, were these beers any good or not? And I thought about how to do this. I thought, do I do them one at a time? It's like, no, it's 10 videos, that's going to take me like a month to produce. Are we going to do sets of 3? I was like, are people really going to want to come back for 3 parts? I thought, no, we're going to do it properly. All beers in this box reviewed right here, right now. Now, for this to be fair, I'm actually going to record this over 3 separate days. So I'm going to do the beers in sets of 3. And I know what you're thinking, Tom, that makes 9. However, the Hofbrau, the one that is the official Oktoberfest beer, I've already reviewed for this year, so the scoreboard can start with that one. I'm going to rate them all on the same 3 metrics that I did all of the proper Oktoberfest beers, which is the visual, the aroma, and the taste. But in the interest of answering the question, is this box actually worth it, I'm also going to add in a 4th parameter, which is kind of perceived cost value, as in what I would be willing to pay for it or what I think it's worth for the quality of the product. The reason that's interesting as well is just because I might not like a beer on, say, its aroma or its taste, but it's not subjectively a bad beer, I can still give an honest review for the aroma and the taste, but the price might not be representative of it, if that makes sense. I'm going to do all 10 right here, right now. And to start us off, on the screen now is the leaderboard with that solitary Hofbrau Oktoberfest beer with its current score. That is a 9 for the visual, an 8 for the aroma, and a 7 for the taste, giving it a total of 24. And now I need to add in that extra parameter of cost to say what I think the Hofbrau is worth. And in my mind, it was a very, very good beer, but it wasn't without its flaws. And having actually had more than 1 bottle of this now, I can say, and after talking to other people, that this year's Hofbrau is a little bit inconsistent. As a result of that knowledge and that information, I'm going to have to say £3.25. It's a very, very good beer, but it's not exceptional by any means. Actually, I think previous years of the Hofbrau have been better. So there you go, £3.25 to kick us off. Here we go then. Here are today's 3. We'll be starting off over here on my right to your left with the Wildbrau Kitabier. This is weighing in at 5.7%, so not bad at all. And as you can see from the glassware on the table, we're doing all of these out of these little kind of craft taster glasses because, well, we just need to make it fair. Of course, a set of miniature steins would be far more amusing, but apparently they're extortionately expensive, so not yet, maybe next year. But anyway, before we crack this one open, here is a quick look at it. The Wildbrau Kitabier. I really like the label on this one, I have to say. It's a little bit more modern, but still not overdoing it. Still got a very kind of trad German beer look, but just updated, modernised a touch, which I'm a big fan of. Now then, on the visual, this is an absolutely fantastic start. That the head on this is absolutely creamy. You know what? Good carbonation level in there, good colour, good head. It's a 10. Off the bat, we've got our first 10, which I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting a 10 straight out of the gate, but here we are, and that is what it is. So, aroma time. Bit yeasty, has to be said. Very yeasty. It's almost got more a Franco-Belgian yeast thing going on there. Malt's coming through, but I'm not getting past the yeast. Not really. But the malt smells good, what is there. Not a lot of hop value. It doesn't smell unpleasant. Straight up, like, if I just ignore the fact that it's Oktoberfest for a minute, yeah, I could get into that very quickly. It's almost Weiss beer yeasty, actually, which I would expect, obviously, down here with the Schneider Weiss. But yeah, it's maybe not... I mean, hold on. This is where a lack of research becomes problematic. 2 seconds. Okay, I've had a quick look. In essence, a Kitabier is very similar to a Marzen, but there's just some slight kind of time delineation differences, and it's heavily fermented, which could lead to that more yeasty aroma. So just how nice is the aroma? It's very nice, but it is just a bit too yeasty, not much of the rest of the beer. As a result, I feel like a 9 isn't quite there, but I also feel like an 8's a bit too harsh, so 8.5. And now the taste, which is what really matters. Cheers. It's dark, it's rich, it's a bit spicy, strong bitterness, the yeast comes through again. It's a nice bready malt base. Beer's a bit thin, look really good in the glass, but actually it's a little bit washy. It's missing a bit of deluxe factor, I'll say. It's a perfectly good beer. The hop really is only delivering a big amount of bitterness. The malt, as in the aroma, is a bit too low down. And I actually don't think the yeast kind of profile is too much in the taste, but that's all I'm really tasting, if that makes sense. It's not over the top. It's just that everything else isn't really coming through. Carbonation's a little bit hit and miss. Let's say body's a bit hit and miss. So on the taste, it's going to be a 7.5. It's a good 7. 7.5 on the taste. And in terms of what I would pay for it, what I would be happy at, keeping in mind that other very good German and European beer is available for the £2 to £3 region. I know it's not in our supermarkets at that all the time, but they are out there. It is worth exactly what we paid for it. It's £2.50 on the nose every day of the week, so even Stevens. Right then, on to the middle bottle for today, and this is the Teisnacher, must be Teisnacher? I have no idea. But anyway, it's their 1543 Festmarzen, so we should kind of know what we're getting here. Bit lighter in colour this, much more akin to what we had with the Big Six. Visually, it's quite hazy, actually. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. It's nowhere near as dark in real life as it appears on camera. It's kind of a cloudy, kind of sun yellow. It's not light, it's not dark either, it's kind of right down the middle, but there is a lot of haze to it. Presumably bottle conditioned and or unfiltered, this one, but that's fine, doesn't look bad. In terms of a visual score, well, the head looks okay, nice consistency, but it is depleting quite quickly, and the haze on that also not doing all that much for me. The colour is good though. It's going to be a straight 2 points down. It's going to be an 8 on the visual. As for the aroma, oh, this is funny because this is reminding me of a couple of beers that I really rave about, I really enjoy. But it's got this kind of buttermilky, toffee, Werther's Original kind of nose to it, which doesn't sound unpleasant, and I absolutely agree. And there's a few beers out there that do that with intent, and it's delicious. But it also can be an off flavour in beer, and there's a few slightly spiky sour notes coming through. Very subtle, not much of it. It's not wholly unpleasant, but it's just making me question whether that's intentional or whether an issue has occurred. Behind those slight issues though, there's nice kind of sweet bread malt in there, not much hop, pretty much what we'd expect. Those bits that are making me question a lot are at least a 3-point deduction, and there's just not enough of the raw material really coming through. There's not enough malt in there, there's not enough hop in there for me. As a result, I'm going to be a little bit lenient, given that I said it's the 3-point deduction, 6.5. And then the taste. Cheers. The oddities on the nose aren't as apparent in the flavour. but it is a bit of a one-trick pony. It's got this nice, sweet, bready malt, but it feels like it should be a lighter, spritzier beer, if that makes sense. The body, the carbonation, all leads me towards a very well-balanced hop and malt combo that results in something super refreshing, not super light, but just, you know, reasonably good. There is nice sweet malt there, that's all that's really going on. But towards the back end, it starts to become a little bit cardboardy. I think if I wasn't being picky and you put this down in front of me, because it's malt forward and it's not big on the hop, and in essence it goes to my preferences when it comes to this style of beer and to some degree beer in general, then I would not be annoyed that you bought me one of these, because it is in effect a nice tasting beer. I like it, but it feels cheap. As I mentioned in the intro, there is going to be a bit of a discrepancy here between, I think, the actual score and what I think it's worth. In terms of a score, I think it pretty much matches the aroma, if I'm honest. Maybe creeps up to a 7. I think I'm going to give it a flat 7 for the taste. In terms of the price, though, this feels cheap. I'm not going to lie. And right here, right now, I think it's a £1.75 beer. I think is probably fair. So there you go. Yeah, 7 for the taste, £1.75. Just realised I clipped this bit out because I restarted the camera, but between each of these, I'm taking a sip of water just to cleanse the palate and so we're fresh for the next one. Probably won't actually keep that in for every clip because it's boring, but just so you know, I'm doing it kind of properly. Okay, and then we are on to the Schneider Weiss. This is their Festweisse. Schneider Weiss, of course, known for their Weiss beer. And it's just their Festweisse Weiss beer. This one clocks in at... What is the ABV on you? They don't want to tell us. Tiny writing in the middle of a load of other text, 6.2%. I'm a big fan of Weiss beer. Really do enjoy it. Sometimes it doesn't like me so much, but I am really looking forward to this one. Quick look at that label for you before we get into it. It does look the part, this. I mean, Schneider Weiss, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of this box, quite a large brewer. But yeah, I think this one is going to be pretty good. Now, one thing that we can't really do here is pour a Weiss beer properly into this glass, which might limit its ability to shine through. But what I am going to do is very carefully, I'm going to tip it upside down to release all of the yeasty goodness in the bottom, because in a Weiss beer, well, you want some of that in your glass. Bottle opener at the ready. Hopefully I didn't shake it up too much. Nope, good, we are safe. Let the pour begin. Right then, well, pretty much what we'd expect from a Weiss beer. Big, cloudy, hazy, juicy looking body to it. The head's not too interesting. It's a little bit dulled down for most Weiss beers, but otherwise I can't really criticise it. It looks bright, juicy, hazy, just what I expect out of a Weiss beer, and yeah, as a result, it's in with a 9. So then, the aroma. Big, yeasty, zesty, foam shrimp, kind of banana sweets, all that very, I guess, traditional Weiss beer stuff. I don't feel like I'm getting anything extra from it though. It doesn't feel like a special Weiss beer, a Fest-specific Weiss beer. It just feels like any one of their Weiss beers. At this point, obviously, I'm sure if you put them side by side, there'd be a huge difference. But just at this point in time, nothing notable coming through. That said though, it is absolutely solid. As a result, well, I can't give it a 10 because it's not. There's nothing special. There's nothing really gleaming out there as like an absolute heroic piece of mastery. But at the same time, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It smells very appealing and exactly what I'd expect. So it's another 9. Right then, let's get into it. Cheers. Oh, that is different. The front of the tongue, it is exactly what you'd expect from a Weiss beer. It's got that slightly citric edge, very yeasty, and it's got that kind of foam shrimp, banana sweet and sweet shot thing going on. And then it all kind of pieces away slightly weirdly. There's a huge amount of carbonation in the middle of the tongue. It's quite sherbety, which is a Weiss beer flavour, but not in the way, not in the delivery that this is, if that makes sense. It's coming about it a very different way. And then it almost cleans out like a complete kind of full stop refreshment, cleansing, you know, kind of sorbet experience, and you're left with quite a lot of low-key but distinctly kind of Munich-inspired lager malt at the back end. I'm really torn with this one because it is Weiss beery enough to be a proper Weiss beer, which I know that just sounds slightly mad, and it has a difference. It is distinctly more Oktoberfest lagery than your standard Weiss beer, but I am slightly undecided as to whether that's a good thing or not. It's doing the right things. It is representing what it is, and it's representing the Oktoberfest, the Wiesn, you know, the event that it's been made for. But I can't help but think I'd rather have had just their normal Weiss beer. Curious. How am I going to rate that? Well, the body and carbonation on it is a little bit iffy, even for a Weiss beer, which can be quite iffy at the best of times. I'm going to come back through them just as a little comparative. That distinctly has more wrong with the flavour, and I can't quite put my finger on why. The Wildbrau, though, I think out of these three is edging it out as my favourite, but the quality in terms of the actual consistency and the interpretation of flavour and the quality of the ingredients and all that feels like it is superior in the Schneider Weiss. I think what I'm going to say is I think it's an 8, but maybe I'm not enjoying it as much as I would another 8 for that example, but I think it is definitely worth it. And in terms of a price, you know what, scrap what I said so far. Right, the score this is getting is the same as this one, 7.5. It's very, very good, but just doesn't top into that top kind of 25% of quality for the taste. The price, £3 on the nose. That's it, decision made. Well then, I'm going to go and enjoy these beers, and I'll see you tomorrow, or for you in about 2 seconds. Just like that, it's magic. I almost look exactly the same as I did just 2 seconds ago. So today we have 3 new beers. Say today, it's the same day for you, but you know what I mean. 3 new beers, and the first one we're going to be taking a look at is from Earl Bakker. It's called Irlbacher Premium Gauboden Volsfestbier. So Volksfest, I think, is the German for kind of like fairground, and Oktoberfest is technically the world's largest Volksfest, which is maybe technically the world's largest fairground. I'm not sure that translation from Volksfest to fairground is exact, but you get the idea. So this is rocking in at 5.6%, and yeah, I mean, it's an interesting looking bottle. It's not maybe the most exciting out there. It's got a nice fairground thing on there. You can see. There you go. It looks all right. Right then, in the glass, the Earl Bakker Volksfest beer looks pretty good. It's a little bit darker than your average lager, but not much. Head, bit frothy, but there's a lot of it. It's sticking around. Carbonation looks good in the glass. And actually, you know what? Now, a lot of these I've been holding up to the light, and they're kind of this yellowy, almost green hue comes to it. I'm sure it's something to do with the lighting, but it does tell me that they are just lighter, more, or so should I say, less amber-coloured beers, and much more yellowy, lemony hued. This, if I can get rid of the fog on the glass, this is like gold. This is a really nice looking beer. Is it doing enough for an extra point, a special point, a full house though? I don't think so. It looks fantastic. I'm not drawn to it any more than I would be a lot of other lagers, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So it's a strong start for the Earl Bakker with a 9, but can it live up to expectations? So the aroma, yes, actually. Nice, brig, bready, pretzely malt. Not been able to say that for a while. A lot of the aromas on a lot of the Oktoberfest this beer... I've not been able to say that a lot this year with a lot of the Oktoberfest beers. They've all been very dialed back in the aroma, not too big, not too bready. Really nice, properly, heavily malted base, and got a bit of nice earthy hop character to it as well. Again, I've been so underwhelmed by the aroma on a lot of these that this is running very high in the grand scheme of things. I'd love to give it a 10, but what it's actually doing is, I think, the bare minimum that they should all be doing, and they aren't doing that. So yeah, it's another 9. Right then, it's 2 for 2. I've got very high hopes for this, and to say from the look of it I was just a bit, I don't know, not disinterested, just Yeah, it was just fine. It was just another bottle of beer. Didn't stand out to me at all out of the lot. Let's give it a go. Cheers. That is solid. And by that I mean this one over here. The Irlbacher, it reminds me a lot of the Hofbrau. It's nice, it's got a good amount of malt, the hop comes through. Maybe it doesn't have a lot of the mineral quality that you'd like sometimes out of this kind of beer, but what it does have is a bit of an overarching bitterness that is, I'm not going to say too much, but it's on the high end for this style, and it's just detracting a little bit. But I can taste all of the ingredients. The malt's not fantastic, but not cheap. It's kind of right down the middle. Hop value's decent. The bitterness maybe just a little bit overriding. So how do we mark this? Well, it's getting pretty much the same treatment as the Hofbrau did. It's, well, no, it's not a 10 because there's nothing super special going on. It's very nice, but it's not super special. So we're down to 9. Then that bitterness, I think I do need to mark down 4. It's good, it's fine, it's acceptable, but just a bit less would have made it better. And then finally, it's a little bit washy. Now, I actually think it's slightly better than the Hofbrau in terms of consistency, but I don't think it's quite as good in the areas that it is good, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to give it a 7. 7 for taste. It is delicious though. And then we are on to our second one from this set. This is the one with my favourite name, but I don't actually know how to pronounce it. Bischofshof. I'm sure that's not right because I'm just basically saying Biscoff, as in Biscoff biscuits, Lotus biscuits. But Biscoff, I think it's Bischofshof. I think it has to be Bischofshof. I don't know. It's probably butchered. This is their original fest beer. Comes in at 5.4. Little tame for a fest beer, but it's okay. We'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. Design looks nice. Decent looking bottle there. And as I say, I get to say the word Bischofshof, even though that's probably not what it is, several times over. Let's get into this one. Before I pour that though, I've just realised that I've not given you a price value for the Earl Bakker. So visual was a 9, aroma was a 9, and the taste was a 7, which I actually think takes it above the Hofbrau in the rankings, worryingly. I actually think the Hofbrau tastes better than this, but it didn't have the visual and it didn't have the aroma, so them's your scores. Price value, you remember I said where it's good, the Hofbrau is just a little bit better, and I think that might be in kind of ingredient quality, and it's close, it gets very close. I gave the Hofbrau a £3.25, and I think this needs to come down, but it is probably worth more than the £2.50 we paid for it. £2.75. There we go. £2.75 for the Irlbacher. Now, back on to the Bischofshof. Slightly lighter, this one, although, yeah, maybe not actually. Very similar. Very similar. Generic lager coloured, big foamy head. Everything's pouring better today. Don't know why, whether it's just these beers, whether there's something different in the glasses. I clean them in exactly the same way that I always clean my glassware, which is probably incorrectly, of course, but it's got a very aerated head, and in the glass it looks a bit thin. Like, a lot of these have been thinner than maybe they could have been, but this, even on first impression, is giving like a washiness about it, which I haven't noticed on any of the others, even just like me just doing slight motions with my other hand. Don't know if you can see that. It's really moving the beer around. The colour's nice, the head looks good, but that is very, very thin. It doesn't look unappealing though, so again, we're down to 9 because there's nothing special. We're definitely down to 8 because of the wateriness, and actually I think we need to deduct a little bit more because it really does. The more I look at it, the worse and thinner it just appears in the glass. It's 7.5. Right then, aroma on the Bischofshof. We're back to slightly dulled out beer again here. Not filling me with confidence, I have to say. It doesn't smell bad, it just doesn't really smell of anything. It's really tiny bit of malt, maybe a tiny little bit of hop bitterness, little metallic edge again, which isn't a bad thing, but if there's not a lot to smell and you can still smell that, it's not a great sign. But it isn't offensive. So we're above the 5 mark, because basically anything below a 5 is just bad and it's just degrees of badness. Everything above, pretty good in some regard. I'm going to be a 6. Alright, Bischofshof has disappointed me so far because I love saying it, but visually it's not there, the aroma's not really there, it's all just a little disappointing. So let's get into it. Cheers. There had to be one, didn't there? There had to be one. There's just nothing going on. The best thing I can say about it is that the carbonation is right. Like, it's the right amount of fizziness. Which isn't great applause, really, although people do often get it wrong. Interesting to note again, though, it's not offensive. Like, there's really nothing... In fact, I need to do one thing. I'm going to swirl the bottle... I mean, no, this is clear as day. So I was going to swirl the bottle around and give it another quick glug in the glass to see if it brings anything else, and it's all stuck in the bottle there. But there's a bit of light bitterness. It's very thirst-quenching, refreshing. There are malt flavours there, but it's just... It's so soft, it's so dialed back, and it's very, very splashy. Look, I've said it before, if you end up at an Oktoberfest and it's 30 degrees outside, then you know what, you quite like this, like, it'd be pretty decent, but it's just not good enough, really, for what is a fest beer display of kind of German brewing excellence, and as a result, I don't really need to talk about it anymore. It's just not very good. It's not bad. Oh, this is the problem. It is not bad. There's no off tones with it. It's just dull. Is a 5 too harsh? A 5 might be too harsh, but I think a 6 is too generous. 5.5. And as for cost, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of ingredients in there. It's watery, there's no flavour. It feels as cheap as it gets. It is, in terms of a single unit price, like, this has got to be £1 at most. Like, yeah, it really, this feels like it's pushing bargain basement. Is that, again, I feel like maybe we're being a bit on 125. I'm going to give it 125 because there's nothing offensive. Most other beers at that price point have a naff taste, something off about them. This doesn't have anything off because it just doesn't really have anything. And then finally for today we have this, which I'm terrified to try and pronounce. This is from Kuchlbauer, a Gillamoos beer, and it's just called Kuchlbauer's Gillamoos beer. It rocks in at 5.6%, so... yeah, it's alright. It's a very interesting label actually on this one. This is by far the most kind of colourful and out there of the whole thing. It's got the fairground theme again, of course, because of Oktoberfest. So let's get this open. This is hazy, slightly. It's nowhere near as clear as some of them have been. It's got a bit of chill haze on the glass, but even when I clear it, I can't really see through it properly. There is definitely some other matter in here. Visually though, it looks absolutely fine. The haze, I don't know what it is in fest beers, and I know it's traditional long time ago to have cloudier beer, but just in my mind, when I think fest beer, I'm thinking that the hypest of all clarity. The head is, it's not terrible, but it's not great. So I think we're going in for a 7. It looks absolutely acceptable, but nothing special, and there are some improvements to be made. Right then, aroma. Oh, interesting. Green, spritzy, hyper refreshing, almost viney. You know, like grapevines and tomato vines. And if you've ever had a tomato plant, it leaves that kind of funny aroma on your hands after you touch it because of all the little hairs on it. It's from the hop, but I'm getting that kind of vibe. And got the minerals, slight metallic note, not offensively though, not too much, quite good. But unfortunately the malt has packed its bags and gone on holiday. It's not there, it's not to be found. There is a sweetness about it, but it's just a generic light sweetness. It's not malty, big, beery loveliness that we're looking for. As a result then, no special element to it really. Malt's depleted, and I think it's 2 points down for that malt depletion because there really is nothing there. But everything else is perfectly acceptable, so it's a 7. Now then, in for the big money. Cheers. A pattern seems to be emerging where I tried the third beer and I get all confused. It's nice, light, refreshing. The flavour's there, but it's only just not getting a berating because of the one that came before it. I'm going to go back and forth between the two. And then to the first one. That first one, the Earl Bakker, leaps and bounds ahead. Interestingly, I don't know whether it's because it's warmed up now, it's been in the glass for a minute, but the Bischofshof actually now has more flavour, despite me saying it tasted of nothing, than this Kuchlbauer now seems to have. Honestly, those two are like a nigh on even. It's really, the Bischofshof has a little bit more bitterness. The one I'm going to keep forgetting, the Kuchlbauer, there's a little bit more sweetness to it, but they're both pretty dull. I'm not going to lie. Like, they're not, there's nothing wrong with them either. They are absolutely fantastic everyday lagers, but they're not giving me that special Oktoberfest fizz. I'm going to absolutely match the scores between these two because, well, there's really no point doing anything else. So they have it 5.5 for the taste and £1.25 for the value. Exactly the same as the Bischofshof got. The aroma and the visual on the Kuchlbauer obviously was better, but is it a better beer? I'm not really sure. I'm really not sure. These were very average. Right then, on to the next three. So let's get into these three so we can finally declare firstly a winner and then whether it was actually worth it or not for this box. So far, I'm kind of in a set of mixed ideas. I've had a couple of beers that were really nice, but I don't know that they were nice enough for me to go out and buy a box again. So these three will probably really be the decider. First up, we have this from Falter. It's their, now this is going to be a difficult one. Is that Pichelsteiner? I've acquired a lisp. Pichelsteiner? I think that's how it's pronounced. Pichelsteiner Festbier. This is what it looks like. It's pretty nice looking bottle. I keep showing you bottles of beer and they all, funny enough, look like bottles of beer. No outrageous kind of labels in this set really, with the exception of one or two. Let's break this open. It is a 5.9% Festbier, this one, so right on the money in that proper Festbier space, kind of high fives, low sixes. Okay, good looking beer in the glass this. It is a lighter one, but many of them have been. Got a solid head on it. Carbonation looks good. It's touching towards the golden rather than the yellow, which I think in my mind just makes it very, very acceptable. The head's a little bit bubbly at the minute. Can I really deduct any points though? It looks pretty good overall. I don't think I can. I think, now, you know, minor. We can take minor points off. 8.5. Right then, aromas, solid, very solid, nice, bready, not too sweet, distinctly heavily malty though, and trying to balance that sweetness and the malt can be tricky, but this definitely seems to be doing it. There's a little bit of a hop note in there, you can tell there's a little bit of bitterness, but really it just smells like a damn good bakery, so I'm all in on this one. That's a fantastic aroma actually. Is that the best smelling of the lot ever? Of course, I'm doing this over different days, so it's a little bit difficult to really clarify, but it's as good as anything else we've had so far, that is absolutely for certain. There is just a tiny, slightly stale note in the back there if I really dig around for it, but it's so impressive. Other than that, I think we can just balance it out and call it a 9. And then, onto the taste. Cheers. It's nice, it's balanced, malt's there, hop value's there. It has everything in the right proportions. If anything, there's a little bit more bitterness than some of them that I've said that about, but some of those were actually a little bit sweet, so still very much sitting level pegging with a lot of those I've been raving about. However, it is just a little bit muted. Not as much as those two from the previous set at the end there, they were really squashed. This is just, it's beautifully in the middle of the road, if that makes sense. Like, there is just enough going on to make you go, actually, I could definitely dig a pint of that. But at the same time, it's not quite enough there for me to really go all raving about it and go, yes, you've got to try it. I mean, it's so inoffensive, in fact, I'm actually struggling to get individual notes out of it. It's quite bitter up front. Sweetness rolls in, but it never gets too sweet. It never quite matches that bitterness. It's almost perfectly balanced, but it's just a mark or two down at that point. It's a bit watery, it's a bit splashy at the back, and of course nobody wants a splashy back end. But I am actually really enjoying it, so not a 10, it's not a 9, it's better than a 7. Yeah, it's a 7.5. It just needs a little bit more and the body sorting out a bit, but otherwise it's absolutely brilliant. 7.5 puts it just in the top 25%, so yeah, that's it, 7.5. And as for a price, well, is it worth the £2.50 we paid for it? Yes, definitely. If this was sat alongside, you know, other stuff in our supermarkets for £3, knowing what else we can get for that, I don't think it quite cuts it. £2.75. This is another one that I think is going to be difficult to pronounce. I think it's Hohenthanner, I think. Hohenthanner Schlossbrauerei Marzen Festbier. That's the best you're going to get out of me on that one. It's a Marzen Festbier. It's clocking in at 5.6%, so slightly tame but not too bad. Very trad label on there, as you can see. Let's get into it. Ooh, now then. So the kind of excess foam in there, I think was my fault. My pour was a bit inconsistent. The colour on that though, this is where we're at. This is Marzen territory through and through. Nice kind of goldy brown. Still kind of light-ish, but not quite. It looks a lot darker on camera, of course, but yeah, that's really doing the business for me in terms of the visual. Got a slightly foamy head to it, but see, a little spin around in the glass there. That's starting to really sort itself out. That is one of the best looking beers I've had for the last month, has to be said. It's nice and clear, it's got the right colour, the head's looking good. I really can't knock it. It's a 10. Can it back up that 10 though with the aroma test? Let's find out. Ooh, I'm not going to say yes, but it's not far off. This is sweet, yeasty, a bit spiky. Reminded me of some beers that use crystal malt. Not sure this actually will, but you know what I mean? It's that kind of, that slightly depthier, richer malt, along with some very sugary elements, but not necessarily overly sweet, just distinctly sugar, like brown sugar. Nice, fresh, grassy come vegetal kind of hop aroma on the nose as well. It's absolutely banging, really. It's not quite a 10 though. There is, like the first one, there is just this little bit in the background that's maybe just, I don't know what it is. It's not quite, it's a bit fuggy. It's maybe not quite as fresh smelling as I would like. As a result, it's going to be a 9. And then for the taste. Cheers. This is by and away possibly the most interesting beer of this box. It's not necessarily the best. It's a little bit watery, got a few rough edges, but the taste kind of journey that you go on with it is just far and beyond more kind of varied and complex than I think just about anything else. I'm going to try and give you just 3 words that really describe this very well. Bran cereal, spiced toast, and a kind of medicinal herbal quality. I'm actually really digging that. I think it's a very enjoyable kind of thinking drink. You want to, sit there, get into it, but I have to say the actual quality and the feel of it isn't all that great either, but I certainly wouldn't be good buying this one again, I have to say. A rating just on the taste then, it definitely isn't a 10 because it does fall down a little bit, and yeah, it's interesting, but it has those rough edges. It's going to be an 8. As for the price, I'm a bit torn on this one because the quality of the beer itself doesn't necessarily feel like it goes with some of those that we have put at a higher price point. However, because of that slightly more depthy and complex flavour profile, I am thinking that although the quality of the ingredients might not have been stupendous, then there's got to be something extra in there to get that out of it, which does raise the price for me a little bit. It's going to be £3. £3. It is solid. It is as good or as interesting as any other German beer on our supermarkets for that price right now. Mainly thinking of the Weiss beers because they've got a little bit more going on, but you can pick up a Franziskaner for £3. This is level pegging with that, really. Right then, we've finally done it. On to the last beer. I seem to have saved all of the difficult ones to pronounce until the end. It is a Erlkong, I think that's the double umlaut over the O is at Ö. Erlkong Festbier, rocking in at 6.1%. So we're ending strong, literally. Whether it'll be a strong showing or not, we don't know yet, but there's no label on the back. That's what the front looks like. It's pretty funky, very trad, but a bit of a different way of going about it. Quite like that. Let's get it open. Right then, in the glass, this is slightly hazy. We're going back to those very straw pale yellow, verging on a bit of a hint of green in there. It doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look necessarily that appetizing. It's a little bit, it's fine is what I'm going to say. Like, there's nothing wrong with it as such, but it's not drawing me in. It's not bringing me going, oh yeah, I think this is going to be really interesting. And you may have noticed if I move that arm like we did on a few beers ago, that head really is rocking around the place, so it does look a little bit thin. As a result, there's no kind of special mark point. There's no way I can give this a point for just being absolutely nothing wrong with it, but just not special. as a result of that colour and the head. I think it's going to have to be 3 points down. It's going to 7. It's solid, it's good, just not special or perfect. Right then, the aroma. Oh dear. It's like smelling grass that was cut 8 days ago at a distance. It's really grassy, a little bit vegetal, and there's not really any malt coming through. It doesn't smell particularly appealing. Now, I will say there's no sourness, no like distinct off notes either, but it's just, yeah, faint old cut grass, which is, it's just a bit really. It's not offensive as such, it's just not great. As a result, we're definitely over 5, but I'll be honest, I don't think I can give it any more than a 6, so 6 it is. Well, for the last beer in this set, it's not been a great one so far, but maybe it can claw itself all the way back with the taste test. Cheers. That's the worst beer here. It's dull, it's bland, it's a bit bitter, it's a bit sweet. No, it's too bitter. It's got this like, it's not too bitter, it's too bitter for the sake how little else is going on in there. A bit like the previous two from the last round. It's just kind of everything squashed down a bit, but the balance is less good in this. Like, it's really not there at all. Yeah, this one I ain't getting excited about. In those other ones I did say I'd rather drink them than some kind of mainstream brewed in the UK generic lagers. I'm not so sure I can say that about this. It's maybe on a par with them, but I really don't want to drink them anyway, and they aren't worth what you pay for them. So yeah, we're stuck a little bit with this one. There's not a lot to tell you about. It's a little bit green, a little bit grassy. Quite, I say, it's not too bitter, but it's just too bitter for the flavour that's in it. The malt's just left, like it's just stormed out one day in an argument and just never to be seen again. It's just really not very good. So a score for the taste on this one. As I said about those two in the previous round that were a bit dull, I gave them a 5.5 because I still would have rather drank them than a lot of generic stuff. This is not the case. They got a 5.5. With this one, it's worse than a 5. It's worse than a 4.5. It's a 4. Like, there is worse stuff out there, but it's really not great, I have to say. It's just not for me. It's just far too uninteresting. I mean, to be fair, well, how strong did we say this was? 6.1%. The saving grace of this beer is that it absolutely does not taste 6.1% because it just doesn't taste. And then we come to the price. Well, again, those ones from the previous set, the £1.25 a bottle I put them at. This is less than that. This really needs to be bargain basement. And it's all the way down at 90 pence. So there you have it, all the numbers are in. I'm going to go and calculate everything, come back to you with some stats, and we'll work out once and for all whether this box was actually worth it. And the results are in. On the screen now are the results based on the scores alone, i.e. not taking the price into account. It probably isn't surprising that the Hohenthanner Marzen Festbier is in first place because I really did enjoy that a lot. But the biggest takeaway really is that despite being the beer that I gave the highest effective price to, the Wildbrau Oktoberfestbier, the only one in this set that is one of the big 6 Munich breweries, is actually down in 6th place, which is less than halfway. So there's a bit of an oddity there, and I think I know why. As I think we all know on some level, how much you enjoy a beer really is all about the experience, not just how good that specific beer is. Of course, that goes a long way to kind of bolstering that opinion, but where you are, who you're with, what you're doing, all that stuff, and inevitably the brand, the marketing, everything around it also goes into affecting how you feel about it. Yes, that Hofbrau really wasn't the best this year from any of the Oktoberfest beers I've tried, but as I mentioned earlier in the video, it has been incredibly inconsistent, and I honestly think a really good bottle of it, even from this year, would have taken first place easily. So it's a little bit hit and miss, but the quality you get from it, the experience, everything else still does really make it worth that extra price point. Now let's switch this up and take a look at it ranked by price alone, not taking those scores into account. Firstly, those scores are good because it lets you know the quality of the beer overall, but of course if a beer looks really good, smells really good, but doesn't taste great, then those scores are a little bit squiffy. To be honest, in this set I actually think ordering it by price, as you're seeing now, is much more a valid kind of explainer for most people. And again, just because I didn't necessarily enjoy the experience I had with some of these didn't mean that the core beer itself wasn't of quality. And as I say, this set here really is the leaderboard I would take away from this video. The good news is that just over half the beers were worth either what we paid for them or higher, and in some cases quite significantly. The bad news though is that 4 out of the 10 were significantly below that par in my mind, and as a result we have a final number of, in what my mind anyway, this box was actually worth when comparing it to the other European and German beers you can get in the UK right now, and that is a grand total of £22.40. Which is not a million miles away from the £24.99 it actually cost to get this box. Of course, it was in a nice display case, this thing. And of course, it gave you a leaflet with some information on beer in general, enabled you to make your own tasting notes and that sort of stuff. It was very well put together, but based on what we think the beer is worth, and then we add in a bit extra for that branding, for that booklet and everything else, of course there's the ease of purchasing as well. It would be difficult to buy all of these beers on their own, but I'm not sure you'd necessarily want to. As a result of that, I think we can say it's a fair price. It's just fair. There's nothing special about this particularly. A lot of the beers in here really weren't worth bothering with, and a couple of them were very, very good. But a couple of them you could also buy in other places, so yeah, it's very hit and miss in my mind. It was a great opportunity. I really enjoyed making this video and trying all of the beers, but the real litmus test for me as to whether this was actually any good and really worth it is asking the question, would you go and buy it again? For me, it's a no. I'd be taking my 25 quid, heading over to Aldi and stocking up on the Paulaner Oktoberfest beer, which so far in that series is at the top of the charts, and I don't think it's going to be budged. And they've also got an Erdinger Oktoberfest Weissbier, which is also incredible. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to do a little feature on those two together and the rest that Aldi currently have in, and I will try and do so as quickly as possible. But yeah, there's your result really. That's it. It was a good box, it was a good experience, and it was a fair price. And that really is all I've got to say about it. So for those of you who got this far in the video, thank you very much. I appreciate it's been a long one. I've tried to edit it down as much as possible, but it really has taken some effort. But as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already subscribed, if you will be so kind, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.